So my students are working on a job application documents project right now where they are targeting a resume for a particular job, and they're writing application letters. And a student told me the other day that the advisors in her major, or the people in her major's career center, were telling her that in her application letters she should be discussing being a woman in a field that's still traditionally male-dominated, and taking that sort of overcoming adversity narrative. And the problem is that, or the problem, she said, is that she's not particularly interested in telling that story. She doesn't really feel like it reflects who she is. So there's a couple of factors to consider here. Realistically, the overcoming adversity narrative, the increasing diversity, increasing representation narrative is probably a winning narrative for a lot of application materials. But if you don't feel it, if it's not something that that you really believe in and that you think reflects the narrative that you want to construct about yourself, I would suggest staying away from it. Even if it's potentially a good sort of strategy or a good way of convincing people to potentially hire you, you want to be honest in your application materials, and I think that's a crucially important thing. So, and then the other sort of potential factor with that is, well, two other potential factors. One is that if you get an interview and they ask you about that, sort of increasing diversity, overcoming adversity, whatever it is, kind of narrative, then you have to talk about that in the interview. You have to defend that idea, and if it's not something you believe in, you're going to have a very difficult time doing that. The other thing that I think is really important to keep in mind with any set of job application materials is that ultimately this is your job application materials. So you want to be soliciting advice, you want to be seeking out professionals, you want to be getting suggestions about different ways of approaching things, but at the end of the day, these are your materials. You're presenting who you are, and you're presenting who you want employers to think of. You're presenting the person that you want employers to think that you are. So at the end of the day, if it's not something that you feel good about, if it's not something you agree with, or if it's not something that you want to say, even if it's the best advice in the world, it's up to you. You get to decide. And I think there's a positive value to saying, that isn't how I want to represent myself. That's not what I'm putting in my materials. Thanks. As always with Minor Musings, if you found this advice useful or helpful, please let me know. And if you have additional questions or things that you want to get some feedback on, get some advice about, you can either shoot me an email at phillipzapkin@gmail.com, or you can post a comment on any of my Minor Musings videos. Thanks for watching.